Hello there, it's Christian Young with Kaizen Automotive Consulting, bringing you another automotive best practice of the week. In this week's edition, we're going to go ahead and show you a technique that's been around the automotive business since the 1950s. Now publicly, it's often been portrayed in a negative light, and at times it's even shrouded with some controversy. The technique we're going to show you today is called the turnover from a salesperson to a sales manager, or in the automotive business as it's affectionately known, the TO. Now, if this is your first time here and you want to improve your sales skills, learn how to use psychology to close more car deals, and receive unbiased dealership product and service vendor reviews, go ahead and make sure you subscribe and then turn on the bell so you never miss out on learning anything new. Okay, let's go to work. Now for today's agenda, first I want to talk about the reasons why we'd even want to do a salesperson to sales manager turnover. Then I'd like to go ahead and talk about the situations that would warrant a salesperson to a sales manager turnover. And then finally, I want to show you how you'd handle each one of those turnover situations so it's done professionally and correctly. As we mentioned at the top, this process of turning the guest over from the salesperson to the sales manager can be kind of controversial or sometimes looked at as a negative type of part of the process. So if that's the case, why would we even want to go to the trouble to turn the guest over from the salesperson to the sales manager? Well, number one would be playing the odds. NADA statistics say that there's only a 33% chance that the guest is going to return to your dealership if they leave the dealership without purchasing. So it just makes sense to do everything we can to go ahead and put the deal together today when their guest is here, rather than try to get them to come back later on. Number two, the sales manager usually has more experience and authority than you do when it comes to negotiating the deal. So it just simply makes sense that you want your guest to go ahead and touch base with the sales manager before they end up leaving. And that way he or she can make the call whether they need to make adjustments on the figures or some type of an adjustment on the vehicle itself, or just some type of question or answer that you hadn't thought of. Now, if you want to learn more about authority and the cognitive bias of authority, please go ahead and check out a video. I'll leave the link above that we did a little bit earlier in the year. I think you'll find it really useful, and it can help you close more car deals using the cognitive bias of authority. Number three, and that is it's going to help your dealership stand out. It's going to stand out as a friendly, thorough, and professional store. I mean, let's face it, if your guest is only introduced to one dealership sales manager out of 3 or 4 dealerships that they visit on a particular day or a particular weekend, you're going to stand out. You're going to stick out as the one that took the trouble to go ahead and introduce your sales manager to the guest. And after all, it's just professional and good service. Now that we understand why you would want to do a turnover in the automotive business, what are the different situations when we should do a proper turnover? Well, to understand this a little bit better, I'd like to drill down and break it into 2 different categories. The first category is the situation when you've been working with the guest, going through the process up until the point before you work figures. The guest hasn't seen what the trade's worth, payments, or the price of the vehicle. Now, the second situation is you've been working with the guest and you're to the point where you've actually shown figures, you've shown what the trade's worth, what payments are, and what the price of the vehicle is, but the guest wants to leave without purchasing. Both of these create turnover situations, so let's talk about category number 1 first. In this particular category, your guest hasn't even gotten figures on the price, the trade, the down payments, or the payments. So right now, you should really be on alert when this happens. Why? Because it's nearly impossible to make a good informed decision on purchasing a vehicle without these different variables. Now, why would this possibly happen? I mean, why would a guest not want to go ahead and get these figures? Well, we're going to break those down in a moment. Before I do that, I want to go ahead and let you know that I'm going to put a link above to give you a word track that'll help you if your guest is wanting to leave without getting the figures or getting the math on the price, the trade, the down payments, or the payment. Now, the 3 different reasons why a guest would want to leave without even getting the figures first would be: number 1, they just ran out of time. Number 2, you don't have the particular vehicle they're interested in. You don't have the right inventory. And then number 3, this is a tough one, but they just don't like you. Now let's tackle all 3 of these one at a time so we can understand them a little bit better. One of the 3 reasons your guest may leave the dealership without getting figures on the vehicle they're interested in is no time. Now typically no time is a reflex objection. So I think the best defense against this particular reflex objection or objection is just to continue on with your sales process until you can. Meaning that many times guests come in with their guard up. I mean, let's face it, not everybody likes to go car shopping. So a lot of times a guest will tell you this. It's kind of a reflex objection or hedging their bets. And that way, if they don't like the vibe from you or the dealership, they've given themselves an out. Many times though, as you move through the sales process and you show the guests that you're professional and that the dealership's a great place to do business with, the objection of time just seems to fade away. However, since we only have 24 hours in a day, there will be certain situations and times when you and your guest do run out of time together. And in those situations, you're going to need to know how to do a proper turnover. Now, many times this time constraint issue is going to come about when you're way out in the lot with your guests showing them different vehicles. So it can seem unnatural or just downright inconvenient to ask your guests to come all the way inside just to introduce them to your sales manager. So what do you do in these situations? Give up? No. With some proper planning and thinking ahead, you could give your guests some valid reasons to come inside. For instance, what if you had a special business card made up that only had your personal contact cell information on it? And that way, when the guest wants to leave, you could say, hey, you know what? I want to give you guys a special card with some contact information on it that I don't give everyone else, a cell number that you can reach me at 24/7. And then you ask the guest to come inside and get one of those cards. Another reason could be a special gift. You could have stress balls made up, a baseball, football, basketball, hockey puck, and you could have your social media contact information right there on that stress ball and give it to them kind of as a parting gift. And then lastly, here's a good one. What if you had some special articles on different vehicles? Let's say you're selling Volvo Limiteds, and you've got a special safety rating article from Consumer Reports that's a matrix that breaks down their safety ratings for that Volvo against its competitors. That'd be a pretty good reason to ask the guest to come inside so you can give them a copy of that. Now, those are just a couple ideas. However, I bet you've got some good ideas, so I'd like to hear your creative ideas, and if you would, just leave one of those in the comments below. Now that we've created a valid reason for the guest to come inside, now we can casually walk by our sales manager's office and just introduce our guest to the sales manager in a casual manner. And it would go something like this. Hey Mark, I know you're probably busy there, but for just a moment, I want to introduce you to the Finortons. This is Joe and Jane Finorton. Joe and Jane, this is Mark, my sales manager. Now, Mark, I just wanted you to know Joe and Jane, they were looking at the Volvo Limited, and we just simply ran out of time. But they're very interested in the black one that we had out in the lot, and we went ahead and did a walk around, but we didn't get a chance to drive it. So I was just in here to get them that article that you had talked about, the one on Consumer Reports. That's the matrix that breaks the Volvo down against the competition. So I'm going to get them a copy of that. Folks, I'm going to let you chat with Mark here for a moment while I go get that article, okay? I'll be right back. Bam! You've just done a professional turnover. Possibly save some gross, save the deal. If nothing else, you help move the sale forward. Well, that takes care of the time constraint reason and how you can do a proper turnover in that situation. But what about the second reason that comes up? It's really common, and that is you just don't have the vehicle they're interested in. Now, this is a legitimate reason. I mean, many times guests early on in their shopping or even later on in the shopping, they've got a particular model that they're interested in because of a certain type of a feature, a towing capacity, maybe a color scheme, or a model year that they're highly interested in, and they just won't look at anything else until they found that vehicle. Well, in this situation, it's actually natural and just good customer service to want to reach out to your manager for some help to make sure that that vehicle isn't potentially on its way into the dealership. However, if you're way out in the lot or in a particular situation that the customer, for whatever reason, doesn't want to meet your manager, there could be some pushback. And in these situations, I found this word track works really well. And it goes like this. Folks, you know what? I pride myself on knowing our new and used vehicle inventory as well as any other salesperson here at this store. However, with our volume, I just can't keep up with it all. Here's the good news, though. I've got a sales manager whose number one priority is to live in our new and used vehicle inventory. So if anybody's going to know if that vehicle is being cleaned up, slated to be coming into the dealership, or going to be hitting the lot soon, it'll be him. Why don't we go ahead and check with him? Because taking an extra 2 or 3 minutes to do that could potentially save you hours in your vehicle shopping experience. Now, as I said this, you may have noticed that I used some positive body language. I raised my eyebrows to kind of create some openness. I smiled, and then I also went ahead and was shaking my head and kind of nodding, trying to create some compliance. And then what you'd do is you'd watch their verbal cues. You'd watch their verbal or their nonverbal cues and see if they're open to doing that. And if they are, then just go ahead and have them follow you into the showroom, and bam, you just created a TO situation that potentially saved another car deal. Well, all right then. That takes care of number one, the time constraint reason, and number two, that you just don't have the right inventory reason that your guests will give you for wanting to leave before you've had a chance to work figures. But there's a third reason, and it's a little more difficult to address, and that is they just don't like you. Well, many times the guest's not going to come right out and say this to your face. So what'll happen usually is they'll give you the first two excuses. One, you just don't have the right inventory, or two, they've just run out of time. And if you've gone ahead and addressed both of those situations like we've just taught you, and they still want to go ahead and leave, well, it's like that comedian used to say, there's your sign. Seriously, if you do want to learn a little bit more on establishing rapport and some different techniques you can use there, go ahead and check out the playlist that I'm going to go ahead and link to above. All right then, that takes care of category number one, the situations where the guest wants to leave before you've had a chance to even work figures. But what about category number two? And that's the one where the guest actually wants to leave after you've gone ahead and worked figures for trade, payments, price of the vehicle. Now in this situation, you need to be on high alert because game's on. The reason? NADA statistics say 96% of the time if the guest leaves without purchasing, but they're given figures, they're going to go ahead and shop those figures. So you want to do everything you can to go ahead and put this deal together right now while you've got them here. Now let's say you've just shown your guest the worksheet that has the figures for the trade, the price of the vehicle, down payments and payments. And then you get hit with the dreaded, you know what, we just need to go home and think about this. Well, in this situation, I'm going to pretend that you've gone ahead and tried to overcome I want to think about it by using some of the word tracks that we've given you in some previous videos. However, if you need to tune up on some of those word tracks, please go ahead and check out the link I'm going to go ahead and give you above. Now, to be fair to yourself, and probably more importantly to your guest, give them an opportunity to go home in the car they've chosen. And use the following word track by just using some body language and look at them with an inquisitive look or scratch your head and just say, folks, you know what? At the moment, I apologize. I've just run out of ideas to help you go home in this car that you've picked out. I'm sorry. But you know what? You know that old saying, two heads are better than one? Well, if two heads are better than one, then three heads have got to be better than two, right? You know what I'd like to do is, let me go ahead and touch base with my manager and see if he's got an idea that none of us have thought about, okay? I'll be right back. Voila, you just gave yourself an opportunity to get your manager involved and potentially save this deal with a proper turnover. Well, there you have it, how to do an ethical and professional turnover in the automotive business. And after all, it's just good customer service to introduce your guest to your sales manager before they take off. And if you do it, you're going to increase your gross profit, you're going to increase customer satisfaction, and finally, you might just help save a car deal. Now, speaking of saving car deals and closing more deals, go ahead and check out the video word track playlist that I'm going to go ahead and leave you right about